Judge Carbone, give her the verdict.
So my topic was taxes. And this is Saturday night. Some of you would rather be seeing K-State. Taxes are deadly boring. I think the real issue is inequality. But the ultimate issue is what kind of society do we want to live in? And right now, it is the society with the rise of the elephant seals. As you can tell from my slide, they are covered in blood, and they are clearly guilty. So let me explain. We've been told for 30 years we can't tax the job creators. Problem? That's been brought to you by the same people who listen to Mitt Romney's pollsters. What this indicates, current tax rates 35%. Notice growth in GDP associated with the lowest of any of the tax rates. There simply is no correlation between not taxing the top and the overall health of the economy. You want jobs? Here's a nicer slide. As the tax rates on millionaires have gone down, the unemployment rate has gone up. No indication that anybody but the butlers have made out. The response has been a call for tax fairness. But I'm going to suggest that's not the right issue either. That the call for tax fairness, we need to fight for the middle class, accepts too much of the frame of the people who got us in this boat in the first place. They're essentially saying the CAC, jobless benefits, Social Security, Medicare, cuts in that are the price for getting anywhere near the crocodile who's threatening to sink us. Instead, I think we should see this for what it is, class warfare, and as Warren Buffett likes to say, his class won. What's happened to tax rates? What this shows you is who's benefited from changes in tax rates over the period post-1980, post-Reagan. The answer, the 1%, the 100th of 1%. Really big time. The 1%, big time. Everyone else, not so much. I now want to talk about why this matters. Again, if we look at this, right now we're presented with this as though the problem is deficits, and so maybe we should raise taxes in the interest of fairness on those who can most afford it. I agree with that. But I think the real issue is inequality. What kind of society, as you have heard from our judges and from our witnesses, what kind of society are we creating? The answer is we're creating a society of elephant seals. What does that mean? We're creating a winner-take-all society. A winner-take-all society. Males may weigh 5 times as much as females. This is not obesity. This is the elephant seals. What happens when fewer than 1/3 of any of the males breed at all? Some estimates are maybe 1% sire almost all of the cubs in the next generation. The alpha males, harems of 30 to 100 females, 500 pups lifetime each for the dominant ones. And what do they do? When you have a winner-take-all society, when Michael Jordan makes that much more than the second best player of his era, when the Walmart top folks walk away with billions, and a pretty good executive only has millions, and the person a few rungs below that maybe is making $70,000 a year, when you have that kind of winner-take-all competition, then you invest an enormous amount in being first or second, because if you come in 10th, you don't count. And that fight, the fight for dominance, the fight for the perks at the top, becomes the all-encompassing game that consumes a huge part of the resources of the entire society. What do the elephant seals do? They roll over. That's an elephant seal male on the left on top of a pup. And the loser males sneak off. They're called sneakers. They lurk on the edge of society and hope to grab one of the females when no one else is looking. This is called and these are the income inequality figures in 2005, and they've gotten worse since the Great Recession. This is income inequality. If you think back to the period from the end of World War II through 1980, we had a period of high marginal tax rates, relative equality, and the difficulty of any one person dominating. So that what you had is a society where almost everyone cared whether public schools were decent, whether they qualified for Medicare, whether they were entitled to Social Security, because only a few people were that far apart from the rest of society. Robert Frank has written a book on the Darwin economy. He makes the point about this competition for dominance. What happens when male legislatures get together? They outlaw polygamy. Why? They recognize that a society in which the dominant don't get to a disproportionate share of the resources is better for them. More prosaic examples. If you are involved in intense status competitions, the plutonymy, Citicorp had this memo to top executives. We are increasingly in an economy characterized by the dominant of the extremely wealthy. What's the solution? Don't spend your time making gas grills that cost $50 each on the left. You need to make the ones that cost $5,000 each on the right. That's where the profit margin is. When that happens, savings decline. Here is the decline in net savings rates as we spend more on this competition. But the more important factor is what it does to our society. Our witnesses have testified eloquently as to the desperation and increasing marginality of the people who aren't part of the 1%. Robert Putnam has been putting together an increasing number of statistics that show that what happens with greater inequality is that people feel disconnected. They become like the sneaker elephant seals on the margins of society. Just to show you a few examples. This is the gap in enrichment expenditures on children by their parents. It used to be a small gap, significant, but note what's happened. At the bottom, parents have the same amount of money to spend on their children. At the top, they increasingly spend more on their children. What does that do to things like gaps in math and reading? We used to have something we thought of as primarily a racial gap, but note, it was relatively small. Now, and that's these figures in here, 1950, 1960, what you're looking at are the gaps by race versus the gaps in socioeconomic terms. So the big differences, again, the blue and red are simply math and reading, but what we've got is now the income gap has gotten much bigger, the racial gap has gotten much smaller, and the income gap today is bigger than the racial gap was in a different generation. It's a direct result of a society that is reorganizing to spend enormous resources at the top, driving up things like tuition. In California now, if you want to go to law school, there is no ABA accredited law school in California with tuition under $40,000 a year. UMKC, by the way, is a good deal in comparison. The feedback effects in our families, this is simply divorce proneness by economic distress. Sure, if you go back to 1980, you know, people who were more financial distress were a little bit more divorce prone, but today they're much more divorce prone. So that economic prosperity feeds back into the family. I could give you a whole set of statistics, I won't, about how the gap in class, in marginality within society, in expenditures on education feeds back into issues such as single parenthood, family stability, residential stability, job stability, and quality of life. So our solutions. I say bring back 90% marginal tax rates, and let Mitt be more like George. George Romney being the father. What do I mean? For Mitt ran an entire presidential campaign trying to tell us that what qualified him to be president was the fact he got to walk away with $200 billion. And when people suggested that maybe he ought to be paying something more than 13% as his ultimate tax rate, he said, you know, I really wouldn't be the man you think I am if I didn't take advantage of every tax loophole. When you create that kind of society, you have people, as you currently have executives, who have figured out if they raise your pension, their bonus goes up, and if the pension plan is bankrupt when you need it, they will be in the Cayman Islands with their $200 million. What about George? Well, George couldn't take it with him. And what happened in an era with high marginal tax rates? Are those alpha males who really want to be like the elephant seals? Well, think about this difference. Does anybody care what happens to Bain Capital? I suspect George Romney cared about what happened to American Motors because since he couldn't take it with him, his reputation and his status as an alpha male depended on what happened to the company, the society, the neighborhood with which he was associated. Let's bring back those days.